Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about a topic that I think is going to completely change the way you think about savings, especially when it comes to your health. And yes, I'm talking about a health savings account, or HSA. It is the only account that exists that has 3 tax advantages. Most accounts like an IRA, a Roth IRA, or even a 401k come with 2. And you have to pick, do you want the tax savings on the front end when you put the money in, tax savings on the back end when you pull the money out? Then most of those accounts come with tax-deferred growth in the middle. It just means you're not paying taxes as the money grows as long as it's in the accounts. But you have to choose the front end or the back end. When it comes to an HSA, you get all 3 tax advantages if you know how to use the account. And today, I'm going to teach you the 5 hacks that I've learned in my 20-year career as a financial advisor to help you get the most out of your HSA. And if you stick around until the end, I'm going to do a little lightning round of 3 additional tips and tricks, the lesser known tips and tricks that you can take advantage of in some circumstances to help you boost that account as well. So let's get started. Before we talk about the 5 hacks, let's just talk about what an HSA is and frankly, how you become eligible for a health savings account. Now, to have access to an HSA, you need to be enrolled in what's called a high deductible health plan. Now, rule number 1 of any insurance coverage that you have, be it health insurance, disability, life, you name it, is always get the right insurance coverage first. So don't just pick the high deductible plan because you want access to the HSA. While the HSA is a very powerful account, you want to have the right insurance first. So number 1, you have to be enrolled in a high deductible health plan. Number 2, there are contribution limits every single year. For 2024, for an individual or a single healthcare plan, it's $4,150. For a family plan, it's $8,300. And if you are over the age of 55, you can drop an extra $1,000 into your account. Now, to make the most of your HSA, you have to know that any money you pull out, the better tax advantages come when they're used for qualified healthcare costs. If you don't use them for qualified, so non-qualified healthcare costs, you could pay ordinary income taxes and a 20% penalty. So that's a very costly mistake to make. But don't worry, I'm going to teach you today on the 5 hacks of how to avoid that costly mistake and how to get the most out of your HSA. All right, let's kick things off with hack number 1, and that is to not spend the money in your HSA. And I get it. You're probably thinking, Brent, what is the point of using an HSA if I'm not going to spend it on healthcare costs? But here's the trick. It's not that I don't want you to eventually spend the money or use it for healthcare costs or other things, which I'll talk about in another hack here. It's just that if you can afford to, and it's part of your plan, not using your HSA can really unlock some of the benefits. Now, like I said earlier, rule number 1 of health insurance, or insurance in general, is to always get the right insurance. Rule number 2, I'll say rule number 1 of HSAs specifically, is to spend the money if you need it. I don't want you dipping into your emergency fund or taking on debt just because you want to leave money in the HSA. But if you can afford to, and you have a plan to keep the money in your HSA, it can be one of the best ways to boost your HSA savings over time if you apply hack number 2, which I'm going to explain in just a second. So what is hack number 2? Well, it's to invest the money in your HSA. I mean, here are the stats. About 10, I think, or 12% of people that have money in their HSA don't invest it, meaning almost 90% of people aren't taking advantage of one of the greatest benefits to grow the money tax-free within your HSA. Now, the question is, how do you do that? Well, the good news is HSAs in general, the custodians, which is just a fancy word for banks for your HSA, typically limit how many investment options you have. If you're familiar with your 401k or 403b or whatever retirement plan you have, they generally give you a list of 15 to 20 investment options. Within your HSA, it's probably going to be a list of mutual funds. Now, I personally, this is just my investment philosophy, but I believe in it, I think it could be right for you too, is I like to keep my costs low. I like to invest broadly and diversify. So I have a bunch of Vanguard investments within my HSA. Now, you may not have Vanguard, but I think when you're looking at your investment options, do try to invest broadly. Do try to keep your expenses as low as possible. And the number 3, always try to have the right level of risk. And that just traditionally means investing in the right mix of stock mutual funds to bond mutual funds based upon your risk tolerance, your time horizon, all the traditional things that would come into thinking about an investment strategy. All right, now I'm going to give you an example of how powerful this can be. So right now, my HSA has about $56,000 in it. And yes, that money is invested. Now, if I continue to look out into the future, and I'm assuming about 20 years until I'm in my 60s, roughly 65, if I keep contributing the annual maximum for a family plan, which is $8,300, and I assume I get roughly a 7% investment return, that's the return I chose to use based upon how I'm invested, my level of risk. But if I assume I continue to make these contributions for the next 20 years, I get a 7% return, I'm on track to have over $500,000 in my HSA. And if you keep following for the additional hacks, I'm going to teach you how to use that money tax-free in retirement. All right, moving right along to hack number 3 is you can actually top off your HSA even after the end of the calendar year, so December 31st. Here's what happens. When we fund our HSA, most of us are funding it via payroll or paycheck deduction. So pull up a pay stub and you'll see a line item if you have an HSA and you're contributing for the money going into your HSA account. Now, what happens a lot of times, we get to December 31st, or frankly, we get to like January of the next year, and we go, oh shoot, I didn't hit my maximum allotted amount for the year. Again, 4,150 individuals for 2024, 8,300 for families, plus the extra catch-up contribution of $1,000 over 55. But here's the cool part. If you don't hit your maximum contribution by December 31st, you can still top off that account before you file your tax return the next year, which is traditionally April 15th. If you file earlier, it's by your tax filing deadline. Now, here's the trick. You can't fund it via payroll deductions like you traditionally do. So you would actually have to go to your HSA, write a check, or frankly do an online transfer to top off the account to get to that annual maximum contribution limit for the year prior. Now, also make sure if you do that, remember, it's not going to show up on your W-2 or the tax form, is you just have to make sure on your tax returns, you're claiming the full deduction for the amount of money you put in for that tax year. Okay, now for hack number 4, and this is where the magic really starts to happen. And it's this: you can reimburse yourself for qualified medical expenses. And you're probably thinking, well, Brent, that's the entire point of the HSA, so why is it special? Here's the trick. Let's just say you incur a medical expense today, and I'll pick a number, $3,000, right? Doesn't matter what it is. And you do not use your HSA. And 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, doesn't matter the time horizon or how long into the future we go. If you keep a copy of that receipt, you can reimburse yourself tax-free anytime in the future for an expense you incurred today. So the key here is keep your receipts. If you're going to keep your money in your HSA, invest it and let it grow, keep a receipt of all of the medical expenses that you pay for out of pocket. It can't be covered by insurance. Key point there. But if you pay out of pocket for it, keep a receipt of those expenses, probably the bigger ones, because keeping track of $5 here or $10 there might be a thorn in your side over time. But if you have bigger expenses, keep track of them. And in the future, you can reimburse yourself, pay yourself back tax-free out of the account at any point in the future. And last but not least, HSA hack number 5, which is using your HSA for retirement income. Now, I'm a bigger fan of hack number 4, which is pulling money out tax-free in the future to reimburse yourself for past medical expenses. But again, you got to keep those receipts, so it's a little harder. But here's the trick. Your HSA, once you turn 65, you can pull money out of that account for any reason you want. Now, the catch is you will have to pay ordinary income taxes, so federal and state, if you have state income taxes. However, you will avoid that 20% penalty I mentioned for non-qualified medical withdrawals. So once you're 65, it essentially becomes another IRA. But again, I will stress, hack number 4, using it to reimburse yourself for past medical expenses, is probably a better way to use it. And more importantly, you can still use your HSA after 65 to pay for Medicare premiums, long-term care premiums, costs that aren't covered by your Medicare health insurance plan for years to come in retirement. So there's much better ways to get money out of the account tax-free. But if you choose to, you can pull it out of your account after 65 and treat it just like a traditional IRA withdrawal. Okay, and if all of that wasn't enough, I'm going to jump into the lightning round because there's still more that can help you get the most out of your HSA. All right, so tip and trick number 1, the lightning round, is you can actually do a one-time rollover from a traditional IRA into an HSA. Now, the tricks are, number 1, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, so you can't do it every single year. And number 2, it's subject to the annual maximum contribution limits for that given year. Again, 2024 would be $4,150 for a single plan, or $8,300 for the family plan. And once again, the catch-up contribution of $1,000 there if you're over 55 as well. Now, speaking of that extra $1,000, here's your tip and trick number 2, is that if you have a family plan and you have a separate account, so you and your partner each have your own HSA accounts, which you can do, you're still subject to the same family annual contribution limit of that $8,300. But if you have individual accounts that you put money into, you then can each, after you turn 55, put an extra $1,000 into the HSA account. So traditionally, you can put in $8,300. One of you, when you're over 55, can put in an extra $1,000, so your total gets up to $9,300. $300. And if you use this tip and trick and you have a separate account for your partner, that partner of yours can put in an extra $1,000 for a total contribution of $10,300 into your HSA. All right, final point of the lightning round is you could actually help your adult children set up their own HSAs. Now, here's the trick. They have to still be on your health insurance plan. They have to be over the age of 18, under the age of 26. Of course, that's when they kick them off your health insurance plan. And they can't be claimed as a dependent on your tax return. So if this makes sense for your family, for your adult children to still be on your health insurance plan, they can contribute up to the family maximum. They can set up their own account at any HSA custodian they want because they're not employed by your company. And again, a custodian is just a bank for your HSA. They can put in the $8,300 into their own HSA, and it doesn't impact your ability to contribute to yours. So for a couple of years, that's a nice window to help them set up an HSA, boost their savings, and get a head start on that triple tax advantage account. All right, I dare say that's it. I hope you learned something about the incredible benefits of an HSA today. Now, if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe. And frankly, if you know somebody with an HSA, make sure you share this video because these are some of the hacks and tips and tricks that are most overlooked when it comes to arguably one of the most powerful accounts we have access to with 3 tax advantages. So make sure you're using these 5 hacks or maybe the lightning round tips and tricks to get the most out of your HSA.